the man has on the woman's assets, right? So a lady who makes a condition with her husband that something that he is meant to get, he will not get. If she writes it and she's still engaged before they're married, they don't have to. They could just follow what's written. But if she writes it afterwards, I'll explain this in a second. They need to make a kinyan. A kinyan is it's interesting. In Jewish law, there's certain acquisition laws. You have to do certain actions. So it's actually like money. If I give you money for something, the thing doesn't belong to me yet. Now, again, if I give you money, then you take my money, you don't give me the product, you stole money from me. But you can still make a decision on the product. So once I take it and lift it up, then it belongs to you. So there's just slight difference between before they are fully married and when they are just betrothed. Okay, if they make a condition before they're betrothed that he won't have anything to do with her property, if she sold it and gave it, it is sold and the gifts are gifts. However, he can eat the produce of it, even though he doesn't get the land, the property. He can have the produce so long as it's in her domain. And if they made a kinyan when they were engaged, that he has nothing to do with it, he doesn't get anything from it forever. And even if he says, I didn't understand the ramifications of this agreement, we don't listen to him. He removed himself totally from the property. If if they made a condition, Gimel. He made a condition that he won't get any of the fruit of her property. He can't get the fruit. However, he can sell it, take and buy a field, and if it's sold and a field is bought, then he can get from that. It's only from this specific field that he can't get. If she makes a condition that she won't eat from the pears or the peri pears. In other words, no benefit from this field, no matter how many times you sell it. He can eat from the fruit of the fruit of the fruit. And that's whatever condition they do, they can always take it out another step, and then he can have it. But if she dies, he gets everything. They make a condition that he won't inherit her. Doesn't inherit her, but he gets to eat the fruit during her lifetime. If they make a condition with her that he will get some of the property, and if they make a condition that if he dies without children, if she dies without children, they will go back to her father, everything happens. When do we say this? If they make the condition before they're married. Because a inheritance which comes to a person not from his family, they can make a condition that he won't get it before he's fitting for it. However, if they do it after, then it doesn't matter, he still has rights to it. If she makes a condition after the marriage that he won't have anything from the property and he won't have anything forever, then he doesn't get anything. However, if she dies, he inherits her. A husband that spends money on her property, whether he spends a little bit and eats a lot, whether he spends a lot, eats a little bit, even if he eats one fig or he eats at one dinner, even if he doesn't take the fruit, he only takes whatever he takes, and what he eats, he eats. So he doesn't. It's not like he gets absolute rights of whatever he spent. He can't demand and say, hey, you know how much money I spent to maintain this? I deserve at least that. Okay. If money comes to her from some random place, long lost relative, whatever it is, and she uses money until she brings it to her, or until and she buys a field, and he eats it, whatever was spent, whatever's eaten was eaten. If he spent it, she didn't, and he didn't eat, or he ate less than the amount that he spent, then you can find out how much he spent, and then take whatever he spent back. Okay, and if he spent more than the profit, he only gets, okay. When do we say this? The Megarish. We say this when we're talking about someone who's divorced. However, if she was a Meiredes, if she was a Meiredes, if she was rebellious, even if he ate a lot, we calculate how much he ate, and then we subtract it from what he would have spent. Okay, so this is all at the point, I guess, when they're getting divorced, and they're working out the assets. It is interesting because nowadays we do sometimes have this concept. There are like certain families that want to, really. Rabbi Manas Friedman is quite against it because he feels like when you marry someone, you have to be totally surrendered and totally. You shouldn't say like, well, just in case we get divorced, I brought this to the family, so the house is mine, or whatever it is. It should
like
be
a prenup.
Yeah. So there's a whole discussion about halachic prenup, which is essentially that is to protect the wait lady. So if she wants to get divorced, she won't be left in a guna, and it's a very, very it's a very complex subject and very debated amongst the rabbis. But here also, that's basically essentially what they did with property. So when do we say this? Okay, so there are many customs. Number 11. There are many customs with a dowry. Some places they write the dowry into the ketubah. More than the money, a third, a fifth, or a half. For example, the dunya, the dowry is $100, so they write 150 in order to 150, and then she actually only gets to take out 100. So they always go a percentage higher. Some places write less. So I'm not sure the reasons for these things. I'm sure
They write 150, but she only gets 100.
Yeah, so they know in that town. It's like in Prescott Valley, there's a really great picture frame place where it's called Wholesale. I told you about it before. Wholesale Picture Frames, and it's really great because when you're framing something, it's part of the art, and it's wonderful. It's very cheap, very, very inexpensive. Very, very, framing is so expensive, but there it's like very inexpensive. But one of the things that's funny about it is their receipts always say double the price, 50% discount. So the price is $360 and 50% discount, and that's their default. So this is, different cities have these traditions on how to write it. Some people write less. They say if she's going to take 100 vessels, 120 or 150. Or 150, and they write down 100. Some places they write the right amount, and then some places they give the man money according to the dunya, a set amount that he can spend, that she should have jewelry. Some places they write that some places that their tradition to the man brings something for the wife, and he adds that and makes a condition. If he just gets married, it's all the custom of the country. And similarly, if he wants to give more than the custom there, and when it comes to do the ketubah, they do it according to the country, and all these things, these are the minhag makes a big deal, and then the custom of each place makes a big deal, and this is that it's a clear custom. So nowadays, I don't know for sure, but I venture to say that now there are tons of customs actually nowadays that different communities have, who pays for the wedding and who pays for this and who pays for that. Some more affluent families, they'll say, okay, let's split the couple's costs for the next year. Some will say, there are all sorts of different conditions. There's some places, there's some cities where the affluent made the weddings so expensive, and people, have to take mortgages out and everything like that to make a really big wedding in a big community. So they're like, there's certain towns where they made rules. Said, you want to be in our Hasidic town? This is the wedding package. It costs $60,000 or whatever it is. The family split. The gifts are all the same. If you want to give a watch to the groom, it's going to be this watch. You want to give candlesticks to the bride. There are places that do that. So everything follows the custom of the Medina. Now it's notable that nowadays I doubt we really have it technically, because we could kick someone out of a shul or something like that, but I don't know how we enforce it. Okay, a man and lady that have shidduchim, and he says to her, "How much are you bringing in? This amount." And she says to him, "How much are you giving me?" And he says, "This amount." And the father said, "How much are you giving to my son?" how much you give to my son, I'm giving to my daughter, and they get married, they have to follow these. These are some of the exceptions of things where you obligate yourself with just speech. When do we say that? When the father sets something for his daughter, whether she's big or small, and the father does something else for his son, and the first marriage, that a person is still close with his children, and they're so excited. However, a brother for his sister, etc., that doesn't. So this is only for like a first marriage, father to children, because we know that when people get married, the first marriage is usually very exciting, and so like usually the first marriage is people when they want to, they're much more generous when it comes to the first marriage. Also, after the first marriage, a lot of times they learn, like, whatever, it doesn't have to be as big of a wedding or whatever it is. But the first marriage, a lot of times, people are like, more generous and more, they splurge more. A father, which worked, that made an amount through his daughter, the daughter doesn't get it until the husband gets married. And similarly, a son, he doesn't get it until he gets married. Because anyone who makes an amount, the whole amount of money is in order to get married, and therefore only once they get married. Son-in-law, and he dies before they get married, and if it falls into the brother. So let's say the lady gets betrothed, and then the father of the daughter says, "I'm going to give you guys this much money when you get married," and then the son dies, the son-in-law dies. So now the halacha is she has to get married to his brother. So he can say, I liked your brother, but I don't want to give to you. He can weasel out that way. Even though the daughter might say, I'm really excited to get married to the brother. He's really nice, and we're in love, whatever, etc. Give this to Michelle. Can you give this to Michelle? Let me just set her up. Can you give this to Michelle?
Why?
Because she left that also. Okay. All right, let's go. So we were talking about when is the proper time to say Shema in the Mishnah. So in the Mishnah we said there was a dispute. One rabbi said, when do you say Shema? From the time that you could tell the difference between Tcheles, turquoise, and Lavan. Right? That's what we said, first opinion of the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer said a little bit later, from the time you can tell the difference between turquoise, or sky blue, and leek green. And then you finish until you could say Shema from that time until sunrise, right? So ideally you shouldn't say it at the time when. Ideally you shouldn't say it.
So this is defining dawn.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, well, dawn. So dawn, the problem with dawn is that it's very hard to tell exactly when dawn is, because it doesn't happen instantly. It's halakhic dawn is a certain moment.
Continuous process.
So here it's basically, this is when you say Shema. Rabbi Yeshua says you can say it until 3 hours of the day, because kings, that's when they wake up. And after that you should still say it. If you missed it, you should still, right now or soon?
It's dead.
Oh, it's then?
It's dead.
Okay. So, Bracha, are you able to get Mendel's charger for her? Okay. So, all right. And we said afterwards you should still read it, because if you still read it, it's a mitzvah to read, like the reading from the Torah, but you're not fulfilling the mitzvah of saying Shema on the time of waking up. All right. We said, so what is the difference between tchelis and lavan? So we said if it's the difference between a pile of wool, which is white, and a pile which is green, that you can see earlier. However, we said, what's the difference between the? We answered. We said between the different colored strings in your tzitzis. Right? We said the difference between the different colored strings in your tzitzis. Then we continued on. We brought a bunch of other opinions. Rabbi Akiva said one. Rabbi Meir says for the time you can see the difference between a dog and a wolf. Rabbi Akiva says the time you can see between a donkey and a wild donkey. And Acherim said when you could see your friend 4 amas away. And we said the halacha is like that. Abaye said for tefillin when you can see your friend. And Kriya Shema is like Vasikin. Vasikin is scrupulous people who they say Shema right before sunrise. And we said, what is Vasikin? Vasikin is you put your tefillin on when you can see your friend, which 6 feet away, and then you say Shema right before sunrise. Okay. Tanya nami hachi vasikin hayagrim nitzachama kadesh yismach gula tefila menimtza mispal v'yem. We have another brisa that says vasikin concludes with Shema with sunrise in order to juxtapose the blessing of redemption. So the rule is basically sunrise is when you're supposed to do the Amidah. So the best time is basically you say Shema right before sunrise, and then at sunrise you do the Amidah. Okay, so that is the end of that discussion, and now we're going to go through a little bit more about putting the blessing Geula. So in the last blessing of Shema, we say Go Al Yisrael, right? So the mitzvah is that blessing has to be right next to the Shema Esrei. That's why we don't say Amen to it in the morning prayers, and the evening prayers is different. We don't say Amen to it because it has to go straight into. You're not supposed to take any time. So we're going to just read a couple lines of where that's from, and then we'll stop. Amar Rav Zera, Mai Kra Yiraucha Im Shamish Lifnei Yareach Dardar. What does the verse say in Tehillim? They shall fear you with the sun and before the moon for all generations. The verse indicates that one should express one's awe of heaven. They shall fear you immediately before sunrise with the sun. Heir Rabbi Yossi ben Eliakim Mishum Kahala Kadish V'Shalayim. Rabbi Yossi, the son of Eliakim, testified in the name of the holy community in Jerusalem. So a title accorded to particular sages that live there. That one who juxtaposes redemption to prayer at sunrise, he will not have any damage the whole day. This is their tradition that if you do it at the right time, you will not have any damages the whole day. Amar Rav Zera Eini. Is that true? Vaha ana samachi v'yitazki. I did juxtapose it, and I was harmed. B'mai itazakt. How were you harmed? Dam tias asleve malka. How were you harmed? That you brought a myrtle branch to the king's palace? Rav Zera's responsibility as one of the respected members of the community to participate in a delegation that brought a crown of myrtle to the king, a dubious honor in which Rav Zera had no interest. Hasam nami of agar de. However, there too you had to pay the price in order to see the face of the king, as Rabbi Yochanan says. A person should always, Rabbi Yochanan says, one should always strive to greet the king of Israel, to witness them in their glory, and not only that, but even the kings of the nations, so that if we will be privileged to witness the redemption of Israel, he will distinguish between the kings of Israel and the kings of the nations of the world. To see how much greater the king is than the Jewish king than the other king. Therefore, it was a privilege for Rav Zera that he was allowed to face the king. So Rav Zera was, I guess, kind of cynical. He said, "Oh yeah, I had to go." He said, "What damage did you have? You had to go visit the king," and he said, "Don't you know it's a good thing to see kings, even if they're not Jewish?" So we'll stop here, and we have a couple more stories about this after next week. All right, let me get some stuff to give you, and let me see what I can get rid of.